Ya, vamos a empezar. Bueno, muy buenos días. Sean todos muy bienvenidos al webinar de irradiación como tratamiento alternativo en frutas y otros alimentos. Mi nombre es Andrés Rodríguez, agregado agrícola de Chile para Estados Unidos y Canadá. La Embajada de Chile en Estados Unidos, por medio de la Agregaduría Agrícola, ha querido organizar este webinar en el contexto de la reciente firma entre SAC y APHIS del protocolo de irradiación para uva de mesa y arándanos, por lo que hemos reunido a los mayores expertos de Chile y Estados Unidos para hablar de esta tecnología y su aplicación, no solo en frutas, sino en todo tipo de alimentos. Hoy queremos agradecer especialmente al apoyo de APHIS y de SAC en este seminario, a todos los panelistas y muchas gracias a Gateway, auspiciador que hizo posible la organización de este evento. Y por supuesto, muchas gracias a todos ustedes por tan buena recepción a nuestra invitación. Ya tenemos una gran convocatoria que nos acompaña el día de hoy. Un honor poder contar con la participación de todos.
With us, and it's an honor to have all of you with us. We have people from Chile, the US, and close to 20 countries, including counterparts from governments, trade associations. We have the presidents of ASODEX, Ronald Baum and Jorge Valenzuela, representatives from ports, importers, supermarkets, producers, exporters, and academia. To begin this webinar, we'd like to invite the Ambassador of Chile to the US, Mr. Alfonso Silva, to address some welcoming remarks to our audience. Ambassador, go ahead, please. Ambassador, your microphone is muted.
Buenas tardes, buenos días, Andrés. Muchas gracias. ¿Se escucha? Bien. Quisiera saludar en primer lugar a todos los participantes, expertos que van a hacer sus exposiciones hoy día acá. Muy particularmente saludar a Ronald Baum, compañero de varias batallas en el pasado, en estas materias, a don Jorge Valenzuela, de Fede Frutas, y en forma muy especial al secretario Gregory Haibach del Ministerio de Agricultura de los Estados Unidos, con quien hemos tenido la oportunidad durante los últimos 2 o 3 años de trabajar muy estrechamente en diferentes materias y que hemos podido avanzar en el perfeccionamiento de la colaboración, el intercambio de bienes agrícolas entre los Estados Unidos y Chile. Y por cierto, una bienvenida a todos aquellos que van a escuchar la exposición que está preparada para todos ustedes. Junto con darles la cordial bienvenida a todos ustedes y agradecer a la Agregaduría Agrícola que organizó este seminario sobre irradiación como una nueva alternativa de tratamiento, frutas y alimentos, de la cual tuve conocimiento años atrás en la India respecto de la irradiación que se hacía en esa época, hace varios años, a los mangos para ser exportados a Europa y Estados Unidos. Hoy día será una realidad en nuestro comercio agrícola con los Estados Unidos. Tras el acuerdo logrado en la última reunión bilateral de APHIS y SAC, en que se generaron los protocolos para exportar desde Chile a Estados Unidos con este tratamiento en uvas y arándanos, y esperamos muy pronto pueda ser publicado. Creemos que es una tecnología innovadora que puede darle mayor competitividad a nuestras exportaciones. No quiero dejar de señalar la larga y buena historia de relación diplomática y comercial, como decía, y de la cual el secretario Haibach ha sido un exponente central en estos últimos años entre Chile y los Estados Unidos. Una muy importante prueba de eso fue el Tratado de Libre Comercio que se celebró entre Chile y Estados Unidos, manifestando el interés de ambos países de mejorar su comercio internacional. Hoy estamos en una etapa de mejoramiento de condiciones de ingreso, como por ejemplo el System Approach de arándanos que ya fue publicado recientemente en octubre, y el que está en proceso para uvas de mesa y acuerdos como el que hoy se hablará con respecto a la irradiación. Por otra parte, quisiera también destacar que en el difícil momento que hemos vivido con la pandemia, hemos podido desarrollar aún así el comercio entre ambos países en normalidad. Hay que destacar que ambos países, Chile y Estados Unidos, se han visto comprometidos en mantener el funcionamiento de la cadena de abastecimiento de alimentos durante este periodo, con medidas como para determinar en la agricultura una industria esencial y promover tanto la producción local como las importaciones y exportaciones se mantengan y no se vean interrumpidas. Esta pandemia nos ha puesto desafíos que servirán en el futuro para mantener esa cadena de abastecimiento, y por ello creo que es muy importante destacar hoy este nuevo proyecto de irradiación que facilita el ingreso de nuestros productos en los mercados internacionales y en los Estados Unidos en particular. Muy bienvenidos a todos, que tengan un excelente seminario y muchas gracias por su atención. Muy amable. Buenos días.
Muchas gracias, embajador, por sus palabras y su
Thank you
apoyo.
very much, Ambassador, for your remarks, and thank you for your support to all of these initiatives.
To have with us today the Undersecretary for Marketing and Regulatory Programs, Mr. Gregory Aibach. A privilege to have you, Undersecretary, and we really value the work that USDA does every day with Chile. Having you with us today is a sign of this great joint effort. Please, Undersecretary Aibach, we thank you for giving us your welcome remarks to this webinar. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and I'm very happy to join you for today's webinar on the use of irradiation as a phytosanitary treatment to facilitate the safe trade of fruits and vegetables and other agricultural commodities between not only our countries, but as a tool that can be used around the world. I'd first like to thank Ambassador Alfonso Silva and the Embassy of Chile, and you as well, Attaché Andreas, for organizing this event. And I'd also like to thank Gateway America for the sponsorship of the webinar as well. We also need to thank the Chilean and American importers, exporters, and producers participating in today's webinar for making time in their busy schedules to learn more about the use of irradiation. And we also want to thank the Chile's Agriculture and Livestock Service for its many years of outstanding cooperation with the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture. This January will mark the 17th anniversary of implementing the U.S.-Chile Free Trade Agreement, which continues to be a win-win for both our countries. Chile is one of the United States' most important trading partners. In 2019, the United States imported a total of $2.8 billion in agricultural products from Chile, while Chile imported a total of $1 billion in U.S. agricultural products. I am pleased that in January of 2019, SAG and USDA successfully negotiated and signed the Framework Equivalency Plan. In that agreement, our countries mutually agreed to recognize irradiation as a safe and effective post-mitigation measure, and we also outlined the requirements that allow bilateral trade of commodities treated with irradiation.
El ingreso de productos tratados de esta manera. Con miras al futuro, creemos que este plan de trabajo, el FEWP, nos llevará a niveles aún más altos de comercio entre nuestros países, lo cual beneficiará a consumidores y al sector agrícola en ambos países. Como subsecretario para los programas de normativa y mercadotecnia del Departamento de Agricultura. Yo estoy a cargo del servicio de inspección de animales y plantas. Es la contraparte de Estados Unidos del SAD. Y nuestra principal misión es proteger la salud agrícola en Estados Unidos y promover un comercio seguro. Nosotros incluimos entre nuestra cartera programas de inspección en otros países, inspecciones, permisos, identificación y mitigación de plagas, interdicción de contrabando y actividades de
This safeguarding mission also includes regulating and monitoring all phytosanitary treatments, including irradiation. We take our mission to facilitate agricultural trade just as seriously as we do our safeguarding efforts. Our goal is to help create and maintain a safe, fair, and predictable global trade system. We facilitate safe agricultural trade in 3 ways. We promote the use of science-based international and regional trade standards to eliminate unfair or unjustified trade barriers. We work to expand and maintain current export markets and help open new ones by resolving plant health barriers to trade. And we certify the health of U.S. agricultural exports to make sure that products meet the requirements of our trading partners. This sometimes necessitates treatment prior to shipment. We consider all this work to be crucial because ag exports promote economic growth and agricultural imports contribute greatly to our nation's diverse food supply. And we believe phytosanitary irradiation will have an increasingly important role in expanding both U.S. imports and exports. The first commercial use of irradiation as a phytosanitary measure took place in Germany in 1957, but the first commercial shipment of irradiated produce to the continental United States did not occur until 1986, when Puerto Rico shipped irradiated mangoes to Florida. Often the biggest hurdle a new technology must overcome is the skepticism of a wary public. Initially, there was not a lot of support from U.S. consumers or industry for irradiation treatment of imported fruits and vegetables. However, after international irradiation guidelines were implemented, irradiation gradually became more widely accepted as a safe and effective treatment option. Irradiation treatment dosages are specific to the pests of concern, not to the commodity. We reached an important milestone when APHIS approved generic irradiation dose that is effective against a wide range of related pests. On the export side, a bilateral agreement between Mexico and the United States led to another historic first in August of 2015. That month, the very first shipment of irradiated U.S. produce, fresh South Carolina peaches, was exported to Mexico. Irradiation options for U.S. exports further increased in 2016 when the United States and Mexico agreed to an additional protocol allowing peaches from South Carolina and Georgia to be irradiated upon arrival in Mexico. USDA allows pre-approved fruits and vegetables to enter the United States when a shipment is destined to undergo irradiation treatment upon arrival at a U.S. facility before being released into U.S. domestic commerce. To date, APHIS has approved 3 irradiation facilities in the continental United States, including Gateway America in Mississippi, who you will hear from today. USDA also allows approved agricultural products to be irradiated at any of the APHIS approved facilities overseas and pre-cleared by APHIS inspectors prior to shipment. Because these irradiated, pre-cleared commodities pose only a negligible plant pest risk, the shipments can move through U.S. ports of entry without any further inspection, which can be an enormous benefit to importers. I am encouraged by the growing interest and success in the commercial use of phytosanitary irradiation, and I anticipate that we will soon see even greater acceptance and use. I want to thank you all again for participating in today's webinar. Experts from SAG, APHIS, and industry will be following me to share their detailed knowledge, experience, and insights about irradiation. I hope each of you will discover how phytosanitary irradiation could benefit your own businesses by ensuring that your imported or exported commodities are healthy and pest-free. And finally, in conclusion, I again want to thank Andreas and Alfonso for their organization and for the sponsorship of this important seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Undersecretary, for your welcome remarks. Thank you so much. Bueno, estimados, luego de agradecer las palabras de bienvenida de nuestras autoridades, quisiéramos dar comienzo a nuestro programa para el webinar de hoy. Comenzaremos con la visión de APHIS.
For today, we'll start with a vision from APHIS, access to U.S. market and phytosanitary irradiation. Now we'd like to introduce Jill Wallace. She will introduce her team. She is a member of the PPQ of the USDA. She is the director of a team that is responsible for North, Central, and South America. They coordinate policies for the export and import of.
Su función es salvaguardar y respaldar la agroindustria estadounidense. Adelante, doctora Wallace.
Thank you, Andres, and thank you to all who have joined today to share in this information exchange. I am with the United States Department of Agriculture and specifically involved with import and export issues of plants and plant products. And I've got a team with me today of an additional 3 individuals that will be your panel representing APHIS, Plant Protection and Quarantine. And all 4 of us will be available for questions, but we will have 2 individuals making presentations. But Barbara Spangler is Trade Director, and she's with our Phytosanitary Issues Management Group at PPQ. She's part of the team that negotiates the specific terms for import and export of plants and plant products. Barbara has extensive experience in the international trade in agriculture and currently is responsible for a portfolio that includes countries in South America and the Caribbean. She is one of our leaders in the regulatory process that leads to the approval of irradiation as a mitigation treatment for fresh imported products. Barbara, can you wave your hand, please, as a there, that'll work. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill.
And Maggie Johnson is another PPQ team member and is part of APHIS PPQ's export services as a senior export specialist, again, with phytosanitary issues management. So that's the liaison group on the technical part to our international trade partners. She supports the development and application of export policy and phytosanitary certification for plants and plant products. She facilitates the smooth movement of U.S. exports destined to countries in Central and South America and is responsible for maintaining the U.S. phytosanitary export database with the current regulatory import requirements for those countries. She works closely with phytosanitary irradiation programs and with outreach. Maggie, thank you. The fourth member of our APHIS team this morning is Dr. Laura Jeffers. Laura is a National Operations Manager with APHIS PPQ field operations. So her management portfolio includes post-harvest phytosanitary treatments, including irradiation, fumigation, cold and heat treatments. She is responsible for the upon arrival phytosanitary irradiation program. She works closely with irradiation treatment providers, importers, exporters, and with Customs and Border Protection to ensure program materials are successfully safeguarded and treated. That's our APHIS team today, and I'm going to hand my speaking responsibilities over to our first speaker. Maggie, I believe that you are our lead.
Good morning. Thank you, Jill. I'll go ahead and start sharing my presentation here. All right. Okay, thank you so much for having me join the webinar today. It's such a pleasure to speak to everybody here on this platform, especially during the time that we're in. It's good to be able to have outreach and learn about these things from our own homes. So my name is Maggie Johnson, and I work for the United States Department of Agriculture Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. Today, I'm joining you from my home in Maryland. I'm going to share with you information about the U.S. market access process and about phytosanitary irradiation. So the information I'm going to share will talk about who is USDA APHIS, the U.S. market access process, phytosanitary irradiation, and then we'll wrap it up with import requirements. And this is a picture of our headquarters building for APHIS in Maryland. So we heard from our Undersecretary earlier in the opening remarks. The mission of the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service is to protect the health and the value of American agriculture and natural resources. So APHIS is APHIS is an agency with a broad mission area that includes protecting and promoting U.S. agricultural health, regulating genetically engineered organisms, administering the Animal Welfare Act, and carrying out wildlife damage management activities. Today, we're going to be talking about the area that covers plant protection and quarantine. That's the area that we work in. Plant protection and quarantine safeguards U.S. agriculture and natural resources against the entry, establishment, and spread of economically and environmentally significant pests, and also facilitates the safe trade of agricultural products. So within APHIS Plant Protection and Quarantine, there's a unit called Phytosanitary Issues Management that Jill mentioned in her introduction. That's the unit that I work with. We are the National Plant Protection Organization for the United States. We work to facilitate the safe trade of agricultural products, and doing that through new market access, market retention, market expansion, export policy, and phytosanitary certification. So today I'm going to go more into depth about the U.S. market access request process. So when a country is interested in exporting plants and plants products to the U.S., they can request market access from APHIS. So APHIS then evaluates information provided on the commodity to determine the phytosanitary import requirements. First, there's initiating event, then scientific review, stakeholder and country consultation, risk management, and then the regulatory process. So starting off at the initiating event is when a National Plant Protection Organization makes a request to Phytosanitary Issues Management for commodity market access. So for instance, SAG could make a request to PIM for importing blueberries into the US. So the National Plant Protection Organization will provide APHIS with technical information for the commodity. The technical information would include scientific name, production and harvest information, plant part and intended end use, such as fruit for consumption, and pests of the plant known to exist in the country of origin. And also any risk mitigation methods used to control the pests in the country of origin. When APHIS receives that information, then we'll conduct a scientific review where we analyze the plant pests and diseases known to be associated with the commodity in the country of origin. For example, blueberries in Chile, what pests are associated with those, and are there any disease problems that occur in Chile that we should be aware of? Also, the pests and disease likely to remain on the commodity upon importation into the US if safeguards are not established or identified. That means what insects or pathogens are likely to come along with the commodity into the US, such as an insect hitching a ride on a blueberry. Next, risk management documents will be drafted. And this again goes into more detail and lists the pests and specific measures to mitigate the risk of their introduction and establishment in the US. It indicates the reason for each mitigation and provides the scientific evidence of why it would be effective. So for instance, a low risk pest, you might have phytosanitary inspection prior to export to check for those bugs. And if you had a high risk pest, then maybe the fruit would require a treatment to make sure that those pests are not able to reproduce when they get to the US. So the next step in the request process is the stakeholder and country consultation. So all of the information that has been provided and drafted and reviewed for the commodity request will get posted to the APHIS website and shared with the National Plant Protection Organization of the exporting country for comment. Next in the regulatory process, based on the mitigations required, either a proposed rule or notice will be posted in the Federal Register for public comment. All the comments must be addressed by APHIS in the final rule. This provides transparency with our public about the new laws or changes in the requirements. Also, the exporting country and other countries are welcome to comment on these rules. Finally, the final notice or rule will be published and for the importation of the commodity to occur. So sometimes, like I said, if the commodity that's going to be exported from the country of origin has a risk to bring plant pests that could hurt the United States agriculture, treatments are required. So some treatments that are used may include fumigation, heat treatment, cold treatment, and irradiation. And probably many of you are familiar with fumigation and chemical treatments, cold treatments and heat treatments, but maybe not so much about irradiation. And Dr. Jeffers and Gateway America are going to expand on what is irradiation in their presentations later in the program. So when phytosanitary irradiation is used as a mitigation measure, there's a couple more documents that need to be in place for that to happen. First document is the Framework Equivalency Work Plan. And we heard the Undersecretary mention that earlier in his opening remarks. The second is the Operational Work Plan, and the third is a commodity-specific addendum. So the Framework Equivalency Work Plan is basically a bilateral agreement stating that each country will accept the other's system of irradiated products. It outlines the fundamental requirements for bilateral trade both ways of commodities that are treated by phytosanitary irradiation. And it includes acceptance of generic irradiation doses for pest mitigation. And those doses included are 150 gray irradiation dose for fruit flies and a 400 gray irradiation dose for all insects except for adults and pupae of the order Lepidoptera, which is moth and butterflies. Here I want to share with you the countries that APHIS has signed Framework Equivalency Work Plans with. To date, we've signed with 20 different countries. The earliest started in 2006 and the latest just this June 2020. So the reason I'm sharing these slides with you is just to show how many countries are using this technology to be able to trade their products around the world, and also the acceptance in these countries of using the technology as a treatment. And it's very happy to see the list continue to grow over the years. And we see Chile on the list as well. The next document that I mentioned to talk about was the operational work plan. It's a summary of operational procedures, includes safeguarding requirements, facility requirements, pre and post harvest conditions for the crops, post-treatment requirements for the products such as separation and labeling, monitoring and corrective actions that include auditing, program review, and evaluation. The next document that's required is the commodity-specific addendum. And this is where, I guess, the more detailed procedure is captured. So here we'll have the pest of concern, the required mitigation, the export inspection procedures that happen in the country of origin, and the sampling and inspection protocol that's going to happen in the country of arrival. So here I just highlight the Chilean blueberries, and the pests of concern here for the United States are the European grapevine moth and the Mediterranean fruit fly. Share with you a snapshot of the actual addendum here for blueberries. The required irradiation dose to mitigate against those two pests I just mentioned is 400 gray. Here I have a snapshot of the addendum for Chilean grapes into the US using irradiation. The pests of concern here, again, the European grapevine moth, the Mediterranean fruit fly, and also now the Chilean false red mite. And the required irradiation dose for the grapes is 400 gray, or if the grapes come from areas that have been deemed free of the European grapevine moth, then 300 gray. So wrapping things up here, when all the documents are in place and those procedures are finalized, the import requirements are posted to the web in FAVOR, which is the Fruit and Vegetable Import Requirements Database. And FAVOR is a database that allows customers to search for authorized fruits and vegetables by commodity or country to determine the import requirements into the United States. So when everything is done, it will be posted here and very clear. And with that, I want to say thank you. And next, Dr. Laura Jeffers will be talking about PPQ irradiation program. Thanks.
Well, hello, everybody. I am going to share my screen now. Okay. So I hope everybody can see that okay? Got a thumbs up on that one? All right, I would like to start off. I think we all should quickly just recognize the translators on this call today. They are doing a fantastic job. And I'm going to go ahead and apologize in advance because I talk fast. So I will do my best to try to slow myself down. We've got a lot of information to cover today in a very short period of time. There's some very passionate people on this call today that really just want to spend as much time as they have to share as much information as we can in such a short period. So again, thank you for having me here today. My name is Laura Jeffers. Unlike the other APHIS folks that you've heard from today, I'm in a different part of our organization. I'm actually with field operations. So this group, think of us as sort of the cowboys running around in the field who are actually putting these programs into effect. One of the really wonderful things about our organization is we are split up into some individual units. And what that really does is it allows us to focus on exactly what our needs are as an organization, and we create a bit of a feedback loop. So irradiation is, because it's one of our newer programs, we've seen that because we have a trade team, a technology team, a policy team, and a field operations team all coming to it from different angles, that we really are able to sort of quickly change and evolve this program in order to really meet our stakeholder needs and meet our mission, which is really the most important thing. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about our phytosanitary irradiation program, obviously with a little bit more of a operational slant. And I'm going to spend a lot of my time talking about upon arrival irradiation, which I'll get to in a second. So right now, we have 4 different types of programs that we use within PPQ. And we break it into basically where we perform that irradiation treatment. And obviously, each of these different programs have different mechanics behind it, different requirements and different people that are involved. We've got our oldest program, which we've been working with for a couple of decades now, our domestic quarantine program. That is where we use irradiation or phytosanitary irradiation to move product around the United States in and out of federal quarantines. A lot of that product is treated in the state of Hawaii and sent to the US mainland, sweet potato, papaya, things of that nature. Sometimes we have emergency domestic quarantines where we, again, set up an emergency quarantine within the United States. For example, we had an oriental fruit fly outbreak in Florida a few years ago, and we were able to use phytosanitary irradiation to move that commodity out of the quarantine areas into their intended location. Gateway America actually helped us with that program a few years ago. Our next oldest program is our pre-clearance and offshore program. So this is for our US imports. We've been working with this program from about 2006, 2007, starting with India and Thailand and Mexico. These treatments are done in country. So the product is packaged and irradiated in the country of origin and then shipped to the US. So that risk is mitigated within the country of origin. However, those can be difficult programs to manage, difficult programs to oversee, but they are very effective and again, manage that risk within the country of origin. A few years later, we realized that that wasn't going to work for all of our trading partners. Sometimes countries do not have the infrastructure in place to begin trading goods to the US while irradiating in country, and the Upon Arrival program was created, originally called the Port of Entry program. What we did is we allowed US imports to arrive in the United States and then be treated at one of 3 facilities that we have certified to do this work. So the risk is actually brought to the United States and it's mitigated here upon arrival. So there are different things that we have to worry about with this particular program. But I think its strongest point is that it's a capacity building program. Countries that aren't quite ready to bear the burden of a costly phytosanitary irradiation program in country can use the mechanisms that we have in place in the United States to develop markets and to start shipping to the United States. So it's a wonderful tool at the beginning of a phytosanitary trade program with the United States. And we have some great treatment providers that that participate in that program. And then finally, our exports program. And here, this is where we are irradiating our US exports to other countries. Right now, we've had some modest wins in this column, mainly to Mexico, our stone fruit coming out of the Southeast. And we've done those export treatments both in the US and in Mexico. All right. So the next two slides basically show the entire sort of import process to get phytosanitary irradiation set up. Maggie just discussed most of the first slide here. And then the second slide kind of moves into the operational piece of all of this. So the first half of this in the import sort of regulatory setup is market access, getting a trade agreement in place between the two countries so that they're willing to trade irradiated goods. And then kind of setting up the documents that explain how and why we're doing the work that we're doing, regardless of where we're doing it, in country or upon arrival. So these four steps are really critical to set up sort of the trade piece of it and to make sure that everybody understands the responsibilities of all the different parties that are involved. And this can take some time, but as we are experiencing in APHIS, every time we do it, we streamline that process. And it doesn't take nearly as long as it did back in the beginning when we first got started with this. So we really are able now to pull away some lessons learned, exactly what's most important on these things. And we find that irradiation really plays itself well into market access and trade in general, because it's a very trade facilitating treatment type. It's not something we really have a lot of time to talk about on this call, but one of the most amazing things about irradiation is that treatments, when they're developed, they're independent of commodity. Normally, when you're developing a cold treatment or a fumigation or a heat treatment, you're going to have to come up with some sort of treatment schedule that's specific to a commodity and a pest combination. With irradiation, it's not like that. It's independent of commodity. Basically, you're developing treatments for a set of pests. And so that is tremendously trade facilitating. And that's why we're seeing that this piece of the import process is really just becoming more and more streamlined. So this is part one. Part two is what I'm going to be focusing on mostly today. And this is where we move away from the trade piece into the operations piece. So now we've identified what we want to do and who's going to do it. Now we got to figure out how we're actually going to do these treatments and how we're going to be successful with them. So the first piece of this has to do with facilities. Where exactly are we going to do these treatments? As I mentioned, I'm going to focus primarily on the upon arrival program here. So for all intents and purposes, the rest of this conversation, I'm going to be talking about facilities that are here in the United States. So the first thing they go through is an approval process. Then there's a facility certification process. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. The next piece of it is working with the importers. We have to make sure that these guys know exactly what the requirements are, how they're going to bring this commodity in, and what documentation that they need. So that's part two. And then finally, all three folks have to come together. The regulators, someone like me, the facility, and the importers all work together to figure out how we're actually going to handle this cargo once it gets to the facility. And that's with packaging and process configuration approvals. And so for all you growers and importers and exporters on the call today, this is what you're going to want to listen to. This is exactly how you need to navigate these waters once these programs get set up. These are what you're going to be held accountable for. So the first thing we have to do is find a place to do this work. And oh my goodness, Frank and Ryan, who are on this call today, look how young we were. I don't even see any gray hair on Ryan. That's changed. So the first thing we have to do is we have to find a facility to do this work. There is an approval process, which is a paper audit, where we ask the facility to provide tons of information about their facility. SOPs about, or standard operating procedures about how they handle phytosanitary treatments. We need to see their licenses. We need to see any information they have on safety or safeguarding. We need to know a little bit about the actual physical layout of the building, and just all the bells and whistles that they have in place to help us meet our mission. What we're basically trying to do in the United States with the Upon Arrival program is we're trying to create, for lack of a better term, a quarantine environment while we do these treatments. Because again, we're bringing in fruit fly host material most likely, and we're bringing that risk to the US. So we have to mitigate that risk once it arrives here in the United States. So we need to make sure that the area that we do this in is going to be safe and there won't be any issues with pest escape. So once this is kind of sent in for approval, we actually will go to the site and we will do what's called a on-site facility certification. And that's basically where we just vet everything in the application and make sure that all the pieces are in place. We use this time to train local PPQ staff, to work with our Customs Border and Protection staff to make sure they understand their responsibility here. It's a lot of concepts coming together, and I wish I had a little bit more time to talk about this today, because this is really where we ensure that the work is done properly. So we actually have 3 types of facilities that we can use right now in the United States. We have 2 different types of facilities that we're working with the Upon Arrival program. The first one is a gamma facility. That's where they're using either cobalt 60 or cesium 137 to apply a phytosanitary radiation dose. Or we have our 2 machine sources, which are E-beam and X-ray. So I won't steal Gateway America's thunder, but they are a gamma facility, and the other 2 facilities that we work with here in the United States are an E-beam facility. Now, each of these facility types have their own strengths and weaknesses, and it's really about applying the appropriate source type to the application that you need. Like I said, they all have their own strengths, they all have their own weaknesses, and hopefully if you pick the right source type for the application, you're going to be successful. So now that we have a facility, and that staff's trained up, our local PPQ and CBP staffs are trained up, we now turn our attentions to the importers that actually are required or are bringing in this commodity. To participate in the Upon Arrival program, you need something called an importer compliance agreement. And this is an agreement between APHIS and the importer. And it basically is put in place to help explain and bridge that gap. So what we do is we basically ask the importer what their intentions are. What kind of commodity are they going to bring in? Where are they going to bring it in? And how are they going to get it from the port of entry to the treatment facility? And then with all that information, we feed it back to the treatment facility, and then we also make sure that the treatment facility is prepared to receive that material. This is not like fumigations. I'm sure most of the folks on the phone right now are very familiar with methyl bromide fumigations and Upon Arrival methyl bromide fumigation specifically. Stuff comes off the boat, you throw a tarp over it, you shoot it, risk mitigated. But that's not the case with irradiation. These are very nuanced technical treatments, and we need to understand exactly how something's going to arrive at the port of entry to be able to deliver the appropriate phytosanitary dose, which I'll get to in a minute. So just for those of you who may want to participate in the future, there's an email address down below. Any importer interested in participating in the Upon Arrival program should send their requests for an importer compliance agreements to that address. And again, this is a little bit more nuanced than this. We're always ready to help talk our importers through this process a little bit more. So feel free to reach out to me or to that email address if you'd like more information. So once an importer has that compliance agreement, they can now apply for an import permit. Now, the purpose of an import compliance agreement or importer permit are very different. The importer compliance agreement really is all about making sure that the treatment facility is ready to prepare or prepared for that commodity, or that we're just making it's a safeguarding document. We're making sure that everything is in place when that material arrives. The import permit document is completely different. This is more of it's really more a documentation thing. So in order to get your import permit, you must first have an importer compliance agreement. And the folks in the permitting office are going to copy and paste all of that information about routing and ports of entry, and they're going to put that into the permit. The permit's what CBP actually reviews at the port of entry. So it is a very important document, but it's a very formalized process, and there's not a lot of customization allowed in there, which is why we've separated this into a compliance agreement and an importer process. And all of those requests can be sent to my colleague Ola down there at the bottom. So once we have a place to do the treatments and we've identified who's going to be sending us material, again, now we really start needing to work with the treatment facility itself on how we're going to actually do those treatments once that material arrives at the facility. We're going to get really technical now, and I'm going to do my best to stay too out of the weeds. A lot of times these conversations are best left to your specific needs on a one-on-one basis, but like I said, I'll do my best to try to keep this high level. Depending on the facility type and the source type, there are different types of packaging requirements that we're going to have for that commodity. There's a lot of flexibility here. Those packaging materials are based on some FDA requirements that are in our CFR, but basically any type of cardboard and most types of plastics are acceptable. But it's important for us to know exactly what the dimensions and the weights and how you're actually going to package, how much, not only the weight of the box, but the weight of the commodity itself. We need to know all of these pieces because in that case, we can figure out how we're going to deliver that phytosanitary dose. And another reason that we have to be really, really careful about our packaging is because this is a little bit of a paradigm shift. Okay, so normally when we do phytosanitary treatments, whether it's methyl bromide, cold treatment, heat treatments, your endpoint for that pest is going to be mortality. That pest is going to be dead. Okay, so at the end of a treatment, you got a dead pest. Well, at the end of an irradiation treatment, you may not necessarily have a dead pest because the endpoint for irradiation treatments can be a number of different things. It can be mortality, but it can also be sterilization or reduced fitness or the ability or the inability to emerge into the next life stage. Regardless, phytosanitary irradiation is going to neutralize that plant pest, but it may result in a live pest at the end of it. So we need to be able to differentiate between a treated pest and an untreated pest. Plus the fact that these pests are fruit flies, it leads us to a need for something called pest-proof packaging. And this is what we also sort of work out with our importers and the treatment facility to make sure that depending on the source type, that they're using the appropriate type of packaging and pest-proof packaging for that facility. So here's some examples here of pest-proof packaging. Early on, we were pretty limited and used mesh over boxes and mesh on holes and taped seams. And then we moved to bags within boxes. Those bags are, you can't see them in the photo, but there's tiny little perforations in there that will prevent pest escape, however, will allow the atmosphere to normalize. And then finally, we're moving up into pallet level pest-proof packaging. So again, all of these have their advantages and disadvantages, and it's just all about using the right type of packaging and pest-proof packaging for the application that you have. So once you know how the package is stacked and how heavy it is and how big it is, the treatment facility is going to work really closely with the importer and with APHIS to ensure that they're delivering the appropriate phytosanitary dose. This is not easy. This is something that they've worked very hard to streamline this process to ensure that the minimum dose, whether it's 150 or 400 gray, is being delivered to the entire load while still keeping it under the 1,000 gray maximum that FDA has put forth. So again, they do something called dose mapping, where they put something called a dosimeter all around the load, and then they use that to read the absorbed dose at that location. They figure out where the areas of minimum and maximum absorption are for those doses, and then they basically set up an operational process to deliver that minimum dose that we require throughout the entire load. And that is how we make sure that all of our import requirements are met. So just a couple of pictures, because everybody loves pictures. And these are some examples for some dose mapping that I did in Thailand a few years ago. We have longans here. We have the plastic crate, and then we have the pest-proof packaging inside of the crate. And as we go along, we add these little dosimeters all throughout the load, focusing on areas where you would assume highest and lowest absorbed dosage. And then we just move it around, we treat it, we read all those dosimeters, we know where the lowest and highest doses are going to go. And that way, when we have an operational load, we can very quickly use reference dosimetry to ensure that we're meeting our phytosanitary requirements. Then we load all that information into our radiation reporting and accountability database. And then that way, when we're operationally doing these treatments, our officers know exactly what they need to be doing at the facility. So just to finish up, I got a couple of slides for you guys. Maggie already mentioned this one, but this is worth mentioning again. This is our fruits and vegetables import requirement database. If you're ever interested in any of the import requirements for any country for export to the United States, this is the place to go. It's going to outline all of the specific needs, including phytosanitary treatments, whether or not they're condition of entry, as well as import requirements. And then you'll see on there whether or not this is an upon arrival program or a pre-clearance and offshore program for phytosanitary radiation. The next resource I'd encourage you guys to go take a quick look at is our PPQ treatment manual. It's available online at this link, and there's all sorts of information about this, our phytosanitary treatments program. These are all import driven, so you can go in there and see the treatment schedules that we require based on the pest and the commodity, or information on how you would get a certified facility, or specific information on irradiation itself. And then if you, again, are interested in just some generalized irradiation information, we have got a online, and the link is grotesque, so I don't even put the link on there. But if you go to the USDA APHIS site, click on plant health, go to import into the United States, and then quarantine treatments, radiation will show up. And there's some really great information, including our list of certified radiation facilities that you can work with. And then it's all of our contact information as well. And then finally, if you listen to nothing else that I say on this call, nothing else, please go in and register for our PPQ stakeholder registry. This is an amazing tool, and everybody in APHIS actually uses it. And sometimes this is my best source for what's going on. If you put in your email address and click on the link, you get a list of options of updates and periodicals and announcements from our APHIS team. So specifically, if you're interested in treatments or market access, this is a great place to go. You'll know when we know, because a lot of us actually use this. And with that, that's me wrapped up. I thank you again for your time and attention today. Please feel free to reach out if you've got any more, if you'd like to get into some more detail with some of these programs. And I'll pass it back over to Jill, I guess.
Bueno, I don't know, Jill,
Thank you,
if
Laura.
some
And
final remarks.
Laura, are you USDA.com or are you USDA.gov on your email?
I am .gov.
So
Did it-
all of us have the same extension. So if you need to reach out to Laura, you want to know that her final extension on that is USDA.gov, because she's just provided a lot of very specific information that I know will be very helpful to you. So I want to make sure that you're able to connect with her. That's it from the APHIS team. Andres, how would you like to proceed from here?
Thank you very much, Jill and Laura, Barbara, and Maggie for your excellent
I'm
presentation.
not hearing.
Muchas gracias a IFIS por su interesante y clara presentación. Les recordamos enviar sus preguntas a través de Q&A en el recuadro inferior de la pantalla. A continuación, seguiremos con la presentación Perspectiva Técnica de la Irradiación, donde Gateway, importante empresa proveedora de irradiación en Estados Unidos, nos expondrá acerca de tipos de irradiación, resultados de estudios en Chile, capacidad instalada actual y posibles proyectos futuros, tanto en Estados Unidos como incluso en Chile. Los expositores en esta oportunidad serán Frank Benzo, que es el fundador y CEO de Gateway America, Ryan Hollingsworth, que es el VP de operaciones de Gateway America, Miguel Zambada, que es el VP de operaciones en Texas de Gateway America. Comenzamos con el señor Frank Benzo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Good morning. Getting ready to share my screen here, so just be patient. Sharing. I think I'm getting ready to share my screen here. There we go. Okay, good morning. Very excited to be here. First of all, I want to give a huge thanks to SAG, ASOX, USDA, and APHIS. A special shout out to Miguel Canala, Julia Pinto, Dr. Jeffers, and Barbara Spangler, who were very key in putting together the bilateral agreement which Gateway America hosted in Gulfport, Mississippi. So I want to thank all of you, very much appreciated. So the next two slides are short videos of approximately 1 minute each. The first video will give you an introduction to Gateway America. The equipment you will see is what is known as a tote system and uses cobalt gamma as the energy source. Our focus going forward will be X-ray, and we will discuss the reasons as we proceed with the presentation. The second video will deliver an introduction about the everyday types of radiation that is taken for granted. Irradiation has been around a very long time, but not utilized to a great extent for food-related items. So with that being the case, let me go ahead and start the first video, and I'll go right into the second video.
Hi, I'm Frank, owner of Gateway America. We are a USDA APHIS certified port of entry facility and located in Gulfport, Mississippi. Gateway America is a solution provider for companies that want to export to the United States. Gateway America is unique as it is the only provider that maintains the cold chain throughout the treatment process. The process eliminates bacteria. It also eliminates spoilage pathogens to extend shelf life. We have services that include different temperature atmospheres and dry warehousing. We also provide logistics and other services. Speed to market is key, and Gateway America provides that solution.
So we'll go to the next presentation. That's the next one.
Electromagnetic radiation covers a broad spectrum of wavelengths and includes sunlight, which is vital to life on Earth. The waves have different uses according to their energy. Radio waves enable us to communicate and share information. Microwaves cook our food. Infrared radiation warms us. Visible light illuminates our lives and is essential for food production. Ultraviolet radiation gives us suntans and bone-strengthening vitamin D. X-rays enable us to diagnose and treat illnesses and to check our luggage. And gamma rays are used to sterilize medical equipment. Irradiation using X-rays and gamma rays can also be used to treat food. By choosing the right wavelength and dosage, these rays can prevent sprouting of vegetables like potatoes, maintain their freshness and taste, and destroy harmful bacteria that could be present in spices, meat, or seafood. They also can rid fresh fruits and vegetables of insects that might otherwise hitchhike, spreading to other regions of the world where they could have devastating effects on the environment and agriculture. Food irradiation involves shining electromagnetic rays or beams of electrons onto food. The energy is transferred at an intensity necessary to give the desired effect. It is a cold process, so spices retain their unique flavors and aromas that would be diminished by heating. It also avoids reliance on chemical methods, such as fumigation or pesticides, to combat bacteria, insects, or other spoilage organisms. In addition, those irradiation beams pass through packaging, so the food remains protected from bacteria or insects after treatment and will remain fresh longer. Food irradiation offers a chemical-free and heat-free approach. It maintains fresh food quality, reduces the risk of foodborne diseases, and prevents the spread of exotic insects through globalized trade.
So as you can imagine, the irradiation has a stigma that Undersecretary Ebach had mentioned. But there was a large study that was done by a very well-recognized meat processor that's global. And they did an in-home usage analysis of the stigma that everybody associates with the radiation. And here's what the findings were. And unfortunately, I can't share that with you because it's proprietary, but I can share the findings with you. Is that baby boomers are typically the ones that have more of a negative connotation for irradiation, especially as it pertains with food. But Gen Xers, Gen Ys, and millennials accept it very, very well, especially if there's a notation on any of the package irradiated for food safety. So we want to go into the next few slides, and I want to give a little bit of a preface before we do this. Julia Pinto of ASOX visited our facility in Gulfport, Mississippi, and asked us to conduct a test for blueberries. Julia indicated that the US Duke variety most closely resembles the variety grown in Chile. Now, we couldn't get the Chilean blueberries because you have to utilize methyl bromide in order for those to come to our shores. So we had to get varieties that obviously weren't treated in any way. So Gateway America had several cases of the Duke variety blueberries harvested on the same day from a large commercial grower in Michigan. These were delivered to Gateway America via refrigerated truck. And upon receipt, we treated a sample set with irradiation, a sample set with fumigation, and kept a control sample set for comparative analysis. The results are as follows. So you'll see the receive date of July 14th, 2018. We treated it 2 days later on July 16th, and the whole time we kept it under refrigerated control. These pictures were taken almost 75 days plus later on October 1st, 2018. We have different atmospheres. My background is in the food industry. I have over 4 decades in the food industry. So I understand what heat can do to the shelf life of very sensitive perishable commodities. So the temperature range that we kept these at, which was the optimal temperature range, was 33 to 36 degrees. We administered 150 grade dose, and you can see the origin of the product was in Michigan and the variety is Duke. So you can see the quality of this product at only 150 grade dose. Using the same dates, pictures taken at the same time, everything was held within the same temperature range. This is the control being not fumigated, not used with irradiation. Nothing was done to this product. And you can see the quality of that product is obviously something nobody would want. And this is fumigation. This is typically what is currently being utilized for products being treated in Chile right now for export to the US. So you have same dates, same time frame, and you can see the quality of that fumigation. And if you'd like, I can go back to the product that was treated with 150 grade dose. And why is this? And the reason is because irradiation eliminates spoilage pathogens to non-detectable levels until they have an opportunity to recolonize. Consequently, it extends shelf life dramatically and retains the quality of your product. This also allows you to harvest your product closer to ripeness, so your bricks count is much better and sweeter quality of product. So that's a very, very huge, huge benefit. Okay, so here's some important irradiation facts. Well, we just talked about one of them. You can harvest products at optimum ripening phase. It eliminates harmful pathogens to non-detectable levels, whether it be E. coli, Salmonella, or Listeria. So instead of these pathogens just being for any fruits or vegetables, it obviously has applications for a host of meat products, and we'll get into that. It obviously extends shelf life for the reasons we just explained. It eliminates parasites and insects. And although it may not kill insects, it sterilizes them, so there is no chance for them to propagate and cause, a detriment to the harvest for any other products. The nutritional value remains unchanged. We never break the cold chain. And again, it goes back to my background in the food industry, whereas with methyl bromide, you have a heat treatment, and anytime that you're harvesting your product and you're maintaining it for optimum quality and you change the temperature level, it's going to have an effect on the quality of the product. And using X-ray or E-beam, it's not radioactive. It doesn't make product radioactive, even using cobalt. But we'll go into some of those reasons why we are choosing X-ray. Now, here's some topics, possible treatment applications, and we're just focusing on fruits and vegetables, but we can obviously go into other categories as well. We have export treatments, import treatments, domestic quarantine treatments, emergency action treatments, and possible items that we can utilize irradiation for in Chile. With export treatments, regardless of whether you're shipping products to the US, it extends shelf life for ocean shipping. So if you were to ship to other countries, you can take advantage of the long ocean vessel rides and know that your product is going to get there with very good quality. You can develop market access with new countries, and you can meet phytosanitary requirements for entry for the likes of going into the US, etc. So how does Gateway America help the industry? Well, obviously, import treatments into the US market is one big one here, but how does that help Chile? Well, we obviously could be a benefit if we were to have a pre-clearance program in Chile with a joint venture with Gateway America. But if you can see on the left-hand side, approved for port of entry, and these are commodities that are approved as they come into the US, and we're strategically looking at opening up on the East Coast for the critical ports of entry. But you see Chile has blueberry and grapes and a list of other countries with their commodities. And then on the right-hand side, approved for pre-clearance, Chile has both approvals. So you can treat in country for export into the US. And by the way, USDA and SAG have their own requirements. And if there was a facility in Chile that you were going to export those commodities to the US, USDA APHIS also has to have certified approval for that facility so it can come into the US. And then we have some upcoming approvals for port of entry treatment. Gateway America has been very instrumental in creating the avenue for dialogue with some of these other countries. We've actually have created a seminar and held events here in Gulfport for the USDA APHIS trade directors, and they've been here and visited. So they actually become ambassadors for irradiation when they go to their countries that they actually trade with, which is obviously how Barbara and Miguel were able to connect and start this process. How does the radiation benefit Chile? Again, domestic quarantine treatments. Domestic quarantine treatments are often used to stop the spread of pest of concern issues throughout an agricultural growing area. Quarantine measures can also create an issue during harvesting. In some cases, entire harvests can be lost. Using specific government-approved handling guidelines, products can be safely harvested, sealed, and transferred to a certified irradiation facility. We had a situation here in the US with commodities in Florida, the Oriental fruit fly infestation. We were able to work with the Florida Agricultural, USDA APHIS, and all of the states in between, getting it to our facility here in Gulfport, Mississippi. And we were able to save the harvest season for a host of growers. Emergency action treatments, methyl bromide, and the Montreal Protocol. I'm sure most of you are aware that enacted in 1987, the Montreal Protocol to reduce and eliminate the use of ozone depleting substances was enacted. This outlawed the use of methyl bromide except for use in emergency action treatments. Latest update of the Montreal Protocol in February of 2020 now includes 197 countries. In the US, which is one of the biggest users of methyl bromide, it's only because the methyl bromide has critical mass to do all of the volumes. And radiation, we look to change that. Unfortunately, irradiation doesn't have strategic locations or the critical mass currently. But obviously, this is a good reason to put this in place. Product quality and temperatures, the outcome with irradiation better than with methyl bromide. Unlike fumigation, product maintains the cold chain throughout the logistics chain and treatment. And then treatment speed. You saw our tote system, and you saw on that cartoonish type video cases of product going down the line, being zapped with the radiation. With X-ray, full pallets of product can be treated. And you heard Dr. Jeffers talk about the packaging and pest-proof packaging, and you're looking at it by the case in some of those instances. With X-ray, the pest-proof packaging can be basically what we would term a pallet sock all the way around the pallet, which could be reusable. So you have some benefit for efficiencies by reusing the pallet socks, provided, of course, that they're strong enough to uphold the shipping and the logistics. Possible items for Chile, obviously, as you look at the bullet points, the fruit is the most obvious because you have blueberries and grapes. Vegetables, we do an awful lot of work with Omaha Steaks on the ground beef to eliminate E. coli. We're working with poultry on several items. Because of our location in the Gulf of Mexico, we do an awful lot of crustaceans and molluscan items. We're working on getting finfish approved, but that doesn't mean that it can't be treated in Chile, for example. We actually have worked with one of the large companies.
Hemos trabajado con una de las empresas mayores cerca de la Patagonia en la producción de salmón y las pruebas resultaron muy bien.
Bacteria of concern, pathogens of concern. We do an awful lot of pet treats coming from the likes of Colombia and Brazil and a host of other countries that enter into our shores. And we do, spices. You can inhibit sprouting with potatoes. We've done some very interesting items like beehives, which, bees are critical for the pollination, and that's becoming more and more an opportunity. And of course, we can do medical equipment. The interesting thing is that there are an awful lot of irradiation facilities around the globe. Most of them, if not a majority of them, are focused on medical equipment. And the reason that some of these irradiation equipment companies that are doing medical equipment, they dabble into the food side, sometimes doing spices, but they are so at maximum capacity sterilizing medical equipment, and they don't have any atmospheres where they can maintain optimum temperatures for product, that they just stay typically focused on medical equipment. Okay, so the different types of irradiation and how do they compare? Okay, so I'm not going to read all of this. I'm just going to give you an overview. X-ray and gamma, also known as cobalt, are photon-oriented, or are beams of light. No different than where you're sitting right now, probably, where you have the overhead light rays shining down on you. This beam of light has a high penetration ratio and delivers a very uniform dose. Benefit is that you can irradiate by the pellet load and is not labor intensive. Going back to the original video that we showed, you saw we had a tote system, that's cobalt. It's very unique. It's a different category, what they call different category, but you can also do cobalt by a conveyor system. E-beam is electron oriented and has an excellent penetration if conveyed by the case or box load. So E-beam typically can only do a certain dimension size, and they cannot do a pellet load. Interestingly enough, X-ray is nothing more than an E-beam with the beam diverted off a plate that converts electrons to photons. So and the ability of X-ray that we are looking at is that you can actually have the flexibility to convert from X-ray to E-beam if you deem necessary. So theoretically, you have two types of irradiation facilities in one. E-beam can be very labor intensive, by the way, for obvious reasons, because you have to downstack and upstack. X-ray and E-beam are powered by electricity, and you can turn the electricity off by flipping a switch, no different than entering a room and turning the lights off. Gamma is powered by cobalt and cannot be turned off. Source of supply is limited and expensive. So if you need to replenish to get to a point to where you can be efficient with your irradiation, your source may not be available. So that's a problem. This is a typical bunker. And when I say bunker, the X-ray unit will be housed within this bunker. And the reason it's called a bunker because it's scientifically engineered to absorb the X-ray so the people that are working in the facility are not at harm of being irradiated. So if you look at the red arrow on the left, that's a conveyor belt. What you would do is have a forklift unloading a truck, put the pallet on the conveyor. It's conveyed into the bunker. It goes around, and I took the top off on the right-hand side so you can see it's a maze because rays can't go around a corner. So it goes through this system, and the dose is administered based on the conveyor speed and the type of product that you have. And then it comes back out, you take it off the pallet, take it off the conveyor, and you load it back onto the truck. So Gateway America is the pioneer in the perishable irradiation market. We have forged relationships with domestic and international government partners. We develop a platform to maintain the integrity of the treatment process for long-lasting trade programs and agreements. Gateway America we take a very customer-centric approach to developing value-added services along with the treatment process. Our focus is to be a solution provider to our customers and our government partners. By that, if there is a situation that needs assistance, we find a solution. We're not just an irradiation facility. We're a warehousing facility. We're a cross-docking facility. We're a packing facility. I mean, we're an LTL facility. You ship it by the truckload and you need to go out by an LTL load, we can do that for you. We can do the invoicing for you. So there's a lot of residual opportunities that exist by having a chilled warehouse with several different atmospheres. Currently here in Gulfport, we also have dry. So we do an awful lot of cross stocks on dry products as well. These are all things that we can do as we move forward. So expanding on that, we've been to Chile. We've actually presented at the ASOX headquarters office. We've toured several of the different regions in the country. We have a beautiful country, by the way. We look forward to potentially joint venturing with some of the large growers or a consortium of growers. We can do theoretically a public-private partnership. We'll work with your government agencies. We'll do consumer awareness programs in Chile. We can work on different international certifications that are required. And the key on all of this is standardization and creating critical mass. This way we can move away from methyl bromide and deliver the best products possible from Chile to all parts of the world. And with that, here's my contact information if you'd like it. It's very simple, frank@gatewayamerica.net. And my cell phone number, if you'd like to give me a call, and talk about opportunities. And with that, that's our presentation. And I appreciate everybody being on this webinar today and look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thank you so much, Frank. I don't know if Miguel and Ryan would like to add also to this presentation, or we move forward with the next presentation.
Andres, we're going to sit in for the Q&A side, so we're good on the Gateway side.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Bueno, muchas gracias a Gateway por esta excelente presentación y por supuesto por auspiciar este evento el día de hoy. Hemos trabajado muy de la mano con ellos y han sido realmente un gran apoyo en levantar este webinar para el día de hoy. Muchas gracias por toda su ayuda. Bueno, y les recordamos también seguir enviando sus preguntas a través del Q&A en el recuadro inferior de la pantalla. Ya hemos recibido muchas preguntas. Bueno, a continuación tendremos la importante perspectiva del retail, quienes están finalmente recibiendo la fruta aquí en Estados Unidos, con la presentación Perspectiva del Retail Mercado Estadounidense para Fruta Irradiada. Y para esta exposición tenemos con nosotros al señor Patrick Haynes, que es el Hub Leader de Walmart Produce Sourcing South America. Muchas gracias, Patrick, por acompañarnos.
All right, good morning, Andres, and good morning to everybody. Very happy to be with you today. Hold on just a moment. Let me share my screen. Let's see, come on.
You gotta put it in presentation mode. Yeah.
All right, very good. I'm coming to you this morning from Santiago, Chile. And what I'd like to do is give just a very brief kind of perspective on how we have seen within the Walmart stores customer acceptance of irradiated fruit. We have a very little amount. This will be a pretty short presentation. I really liked Frank's presentation, and I can tell you that a lot of what he shared, the little bits that he shared about the customer, is very consistent with what we're seeing. Just a little bit, I think everybody knows Walmart probably, but in case you don't, we do have over 11,000 units around the world, concentrated in the US from a volume perspective, but actually with more stores located outside the United States. We have 56 different local banners in 27 countries, and we also have e-commerce operations in 10 countries. We employ about 2.2 million people worldwide, with 1.5 million in the US. As a company, our objective, like you can see on the wall of our office, is save money, live better, helping customers live a better life or feed their family better by helping them save money and have great access in fresh produce, democratizing fresh produce for our customers so that regardless of your income level, you're able to provide a very healthy and safe food for your family. Our core values within the company are respect for the individual, service to the customer, striving for excellence, and integrity always. And I share that just so you know a little bit more about Walmart, but also because everything we look at within the context of our business, we try to bounce against these core values to make sure that we live up to those. And so that's a little bit from a perspective as we talk about irradiation today. Within the Walmart Produce division, this is a category and an area of special focus within the company, especially over the last 5 years or so. We've made a lot of investment into the fresh produce department to make it more shoppable, to make it easier for customers to buy. We've made strong investments in price activity in order to lower the cost of feeding your family safe and healthy fresh produce. We do have about 4,700 stores in the US, supercenters, the large ones, and Walmart neighborhood markets. We also have 50 fresh distribution facilities from coast to coast. Actually, Walmart Fresh produce is available to 90% of the US customers within 10 miles or 16 kilometers of where they live. And we have a program I'll share a little bit called Produce 2.0, where we're really working to refresh the department with respect to how the customer sees it. We're also very excited as being the hub leader of our Chile office to see that in the export data report from 2020, Walmart US is now the #1 North American importer of Chilean fruit. It's something we're very, very proud of. That's direct import and doesn't include the product we buy Chilean from domestic importers as well. But I can tell you in the 4 years that I've been in Chile, our team is really putting a focus on partnering with some of the very best growers, packers, and exporters from Chile, so we can bring that product to the US market as efficiently and as safely and with great, great quality as much as we can. We have had some news over the last year or so where we put in place what we're calling Produce 2.0. It's a different merchandising within the stores to allow customers to interact. We're very fortunate. I mean, one of the objectives that we had was actually removing some of the fixtures out of the stores to allow customers more space, because we were anticipating, we were already seeing that sometimes with the online customer or the online shoppers getting in the way of the in-store customers. And so we took out some of the fixtures to make those aisles more wide without knowing that we would get the COVID activity. And that really has become important as the online in-store shopping has become more and more, as the Chilean people know in Santiago with the corner shop or other local shoppers, and in the US with the online as well. I will say just a little bit about global produce sourcing, which is the division of Walmart where I work. We have offices throughout Latin America, in Santiago, in Lima, Peru, in San Jose, Costa Rica, Guadalajara, Mexico, and then several offices in the growing areas of the United States, in Washington, California, Florida, Texas, and Michigan. Our objective is to get close to where the products to the US market are grown, get to know the growing areas, get to know the growers, work direct relationships with those so that we can consistently provide surety of supply and the best quality to our customers. That's our objective. That's what we work on all the time. And I'm very proud of the progress we've made, although there's always a lot more to do. With respect to irradiation, I first want to say that I'm not an expert in irradiation, and as a company, we don't have a tremendous amount of experience, but we do have limited experience, and I want to share with you what we do have and we have experienced. I also want to make sure that it's clear I'm not necessarily speaking on behalf of the entire US market, but really just giving you a snapshot or a case study that we can share. So speaking from our own and my own personal experience. So the results that we've seen may or may not be replicable exactly to blueberries or other products from Chile, but I think there's some good application. First off, I want to share one of the concerns, and I've spoken with several blueberry growers, 2-3 years ago, even talking about irradiation, is that people are very concerned about the label or the sticker or the logo that might be applied. But on produce, fresh fruits and vegetables, there are many, many different labels, logos, competing claims, etc. I give just a few examples here with the USDA organic fruits from Chile. We have on many of the products, fair trade, how to recycle. And with respect to that, the irradiation label is just one more piece of an effort to fully communicate and be transparent with our customers. So this is just a case study of the biggest example that we have in our markets today. For many, many, many years, guavas were only available being produced domestically because there was not a protocol from USDA and APHIS for importation of that product, because it is a product that lends itself to harboring pests that we really don't want to have in the US. So there were historically limited distribution. We were able, because of the way the product was harvested and shipped, we were able to sell it in Florida, and we targeted some areas right along the Mexican border to try to take care of our customers there. You see a picture of one of our older store displays of guavas. There was always very inconsistent color and ripening. The presentation was not the best. The most important thing, we had very short shelf life and travel. So it was very hard to get the product very far out of Florida. You know, we did, like I said, we extended over into Texas, but not a whole lot farther than that. We had trouble at our distribution centers with very high rejection rates. We also, in the stores, we had very high food waste and markdowns. In fact, many times we were moving out of the store up to 15–20% of the product that we were shipping into the store without it ever even being sold. So it was very much a niche item for Latinx customers who already knew the item, but it was limited to that. As the irradiation program became available and the protocol became available for product coming from Mexico, and it isn't something new, it's happened over the last, I think, 10 or 12 years, maybe even a little bit more, but in a very strong commercial way, which really been ramping up. It allowed us a lot of different things. The first thing is, and it was a bit of a surprise, but a very pleasant surprise, and that is that the shelf life on the product, and again, kind of harkens back to what Frank was mentioning, the target of the irradiation was the insect or the pests that were not allowed in for aphis and plant protection. The side benefit of that was that the product became much cleaner, and a lot of microorganisms that cause very rapid decline in the fruit and the integrity of the fruit were also eliminated. It allowed that shelf life to be extended, and actually the quality shelf life to be extended significantly, which allowed us to serve customers in markets in Washington State, in Illinois, in New York, in Minnesota, in other places where we really were not able to serve guavas before because the shipment just would not make it that far, and when it did get there, we didn't have enough time to sell the product. Allowed us an attractive presentation, consistent color and maturity. The reality is we've had virtually zero rejections, because if the product is good going into the irradiation process, it's generally always very good coming out of the irradiation process. There's not the degradation that there is in other factors. So it greatly reduced the waste at the store also. Allowed us to expand our customer base. We've seen guava imports and sales increase. These are import numbers from USDA, increasing up to 52% in just 1 year. But I can tell you, we've seen multiple double-digit increases year upon year upon year as guavas have become much more widespread, have been able to get served to customer bases throughout the country. And we have a great partner in the guava area too, who's done a good job of promoting guavas outside of the Latinx customer base as well. A little deeper dive, just to show, this is the labeling on the front of the package. Very, very attractive, and a very attractive package. It has multiple different claims. If I'm just throwing this out here, it's a nice label. It may, something this, with this much information may not work on blueberries, depending on the size of the package. But it's something to be considered. And this is the back label. And as I said earlier, the growing partner has done a really nice job of giving suggestions on how to use the product, expanding the use outside of fresh, and also expanding it outside of the Latino customer base that really already knew guavas. So this gives it some really nice additional thing. And if you don't look very closely, you might not have noticed on the back of the label is the irradiation symbol. So the irradiation symbol is definitely required on any product that goes through this process. But it's not a label that scares people. Again, saying what Frank was mentioning earlier, I think customers are okay with it. It doesn't scare them individually, and the quality of the product speaks for itself. The quality of the product, the visual presentation, and the eating quality and the consistency is what speaks first, and the irradiation is more a means to the end. And I blew that up a little bit here. So yes, it does say treated by irradiation. It's a very clear label, but it's not very threatening or scary. I think the people who are most threatened and scared by it sometimes are the producers and the buyers. Because at first the merchant, without knowing the track record and without knowing this case study, are very risk averse and very slow to respond. Our experience has shown that if it improves the quality, it's definitely something to be considered. So I think the obvious question is, would Chilean fruit see the same level of success? And I show here 3 items that we buy a tremendous amount of from Chile, and we sell through our stores: the kiwis, the blueberries, the grapes, all of which are currently receiving methyl bromide fumigation, either in Chile or most generally in where they're imported. And for us, that's either in the Philadelphia area or Savannah, Georgia area, or in the Los Angeles area. All of the items are damaged by the cold chain break for fumigation. It's really hard to control the amount of time that the product has to be outside of the cold chain in order for it to reach the target temperature for the methyl bromide fumigation. It's hard on grapes, it's hard on kiwis, but it's especially hard on blueberries, especially if it's a season that's in any way complicated, where the product is not at its very, very hardiest self when it arrives. That fumigation process definitely puts those blueberries at a level of compromise that is not good for the market. It's not good for the grower, and it's not good for the retailer or the customer, to be honest with you. Now, would you see a 50% increase by going to irradiation? I would say that probably not, because none of these fruits are as undeveloped as guava was when we began this process. However, there is definitely upside. And one of the things to consider is that these days there are often alternative sources for these products that do not require fumigation. And Peru blueberries being the most obvious, most obvious, you'd say, competitive product, or at least alternative product that's available there. And while every Chilean grower that I know, and I think our sourcing people would agree, the eating quality and the flavor profile of Chilean blueberries, because of the chill hours and the conditions, are fantastic. Sometimes that same fantastic condition does not make it all the way to the customer, and the fumigation process is a contributing factor to that. So retailers like Walmart, we're always looking to improve that store and the home shelf life. It's one thing, it's like a requirement that the product get through the supply chain all the way to the store in great condition. But we, with our service to the customer, are always very interested in what is the customer's experience once they get it to their house. And what you don't want to have is a beautiful package of blueberries, kiwi, or grapes that the customer purchases, but then within those several days that they expect to eat them, that the quality degrades and they end up with a soft product, a moldy product, etc., that they're not satisfied with. That reflects poorly on us as a retailer. It reflects poorly on the country of origin of the product and the brand, if there's a brand. But most importantly, it's a waste of the process. Everybody in Chile or whatever source country would go through so much work and effort to produce and to pack and to ship that product for it in the end to be wasted is really a travesty. So I do believe customer perception could change and really help in this case, but it's also something we have to monitor on the negative side. So Frank, at this time, I totally agree based on our experience that the customers do not have a problem with that irradiation symbol and with the irradiation product. There's always a risk that they could go in a different direction, but for now, we don't see that being the case at all. But I will say we're always interested in innovation on behalf of customers. In addition to the irradiation product with the process that Gateway has, we have also monitored E-beam radiated mangoes in a non-commercial test in conjunction with Texas A&M, because we're interested in all levels of providing the customer with the best product. And I can tell you mangoes, I think in the earlier APHIS presentation, they were describing, the heat treatment, the cold treatment, the fumigation. The process for mangoes is extremely hard on the mangoes. It's dunking them in very hot water for a very long period of time and really hurts the final eating quality of the mango and the durability of it. So we're interested in pursuing and looking at and evaluating and testing irradiation and other alternatives really across the board. Just as I look at it, and again, this is just what we see as we look. You've got with the fumigation, the cold chain break, the additional chemical exposure, and the greenhouse gases. I think it is working out in the industry. I know in Central America, when I worked in Costa Rica, we worked very hard to eliminate methyl bromide in all of the production processes. To then allow methyl bromide in the fumigation process, I don't like it. I don't think it's great. It's the best alternative that we have right now. But I would sure like to see us be able to eliminate that to the extent possible. The irradiation, allowing us to continue with the cold chain without breaking that, I think, especially in delicate items like blueberries, has very strong benefits. Currently, there is good customer acceptance. And I'm positive about this improved, and this is something to continue to test and monitor, is that improved useful life for the stores and for customers. That product continues to perform very well throughout the entire supply chain and all the way to the customer. So they have that great eating experience and really are able to experience, the strong blueberry sensation that they have. I'm very excited. We had from our team, we had our first trip out to the blueberry fields yesterday. So probably some of the people on the call had some of our Walmart Global Produce Sourcing people at your fields. We have had a very limited protocol to visits. We're still not visiting any of the pack houses, but we did get out to the fields, and gosh, Andres, the blueberries look fantastic this year. We've had a super year. Our objective now is to get them to the customer in as great a condition as possible. That benefits everybody who's on this call and all the way through the system. So that's it for me, but I want to appreciate everybody, who is continuing to work to improve the quality of what gets out to the customers, because ultimately that's our objective. And a lot of work has gone on, and especially this year with the COVID crisis. It's not over, obviously, in the U.S. and even in Chile. The industry's, I would say the industry's approach and very strong rigor in making sure that they're following protocols for worker safety, to be able to keep our workers working, to be able to keep the product moving. It's been really, really heroic, the work. And for our part, from our office and for all the people in Walmart, we really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Patrick, for a great presentation. Bueno, muchas gracias, Patrick, por una excelente presentación. tal como les comentamos anteriormente, les recordamos enviar sus preguntas a través del recuadro Q&A en la parte inferior de la pantalla. Bueno, y seguimos ahora con la última presentación antes de pasar a la mesa redonda con las preguntas y respuestas, con la presentación Próximos pasos, implementación de la irradiación en Chile. El expositor será el señor Roberto Mir, jefe del Departamento de Regulación y Certificación Fitosanitaria del SAC. Roberto, adelante, muchas gracias.
Buenos días a todos. Primero que nada voy a compartir la pantalla con la presentación. ¿Está viendo bien?
Solamente hay que ponerlo en modo presentación, Roberto, es lo único que falta ahí, pero se ve bien.
Sí. Ok. Como les decía, muy buenos días a todos. La presentación, voy a hablar de cuál es la situación actual del proceso de autorización de la irradiación para uva y arándanos. Y con ello voy a entrar a los temas específicos que va a ser la plaga objetivo del tratamiento, los requisitos generales que se están exigiendo para la irradiación, los requisitos específicos y finalizando con la acción del SAC en los envíos a ser irradiados en Estados Unidos. Con respecto a la situación actual, con EIFI ya hemos firmado el plan de equivalencia, el plan operacional de trabajo y el adenda al plan de trabajo tanto para lo que es arándanos como uva de mesa. Es en esta adenda del plan de trabajo es donde se establecen todos los requisitos que hay que cumplir para llegar a la irradiación de estos productos. El paso que falta, digamos, es que se publique esta autorización para que podamos iniciar, digamos, el proceso de exportación con esta alternativa de irradiación. La plan de objetivos que establece entonces esta adenda para uva y arándano son Lobesia botrana, Ceratitis capitata y Palpus chilensis. Para las dos primeras, la dosis requerida son 400 grados Gray. En el caso de arándano, las plagas son Lobesia botrana y Ceratitis, con la misma dosis. Y en Palpus chilensis 300 grados Gray. También está la opción de, para áreas libres de Lobesia botrana, aplicar la dosis de solo 300 grados Gray. Los requisitos generales que establece la adenda, que la fruta debe ser comercialmente producida y ser parte de un envío comercial. Las unidades de producción deben tener monitoreo de plagas y control basado en buenas prácticas agrícolas. La fruta debe ser irradiada en una instalación autorizada por EIFIS. La fruta debe ser embalada en cajas a prueba de insectos aprobadas por EIFIS. Cada envío debe estar acompañado de un certificado fitosanitario emitido por SAC. Además, se señala en la adenda que si la cadena de frío se interrumpe y el empaque a prueba de insectos permanece intacto, sin roturas u orificios, no se requerirá la fumigación al arribo del envío. Por otra parte, si el envío no procede de áreas de baja prevalencia, pero en Palpus chilensis, la cadena de frío se interrumpe, el empaque a prueba de insectos está dañado con roturas o orificios, la uva deberían ser fumigadas con bromuro de metilo. ¿Qué se entiende con insectos, perdón, envases a prueba de insectos? Es decir, que los envases no tengan aberturas mayores a 0,6 milímetros por 0,6 milímetros. Es el concepto, un concepto nuevo para la industria chilena, que hay que cumplirlo, ya sea que el producto esté en la caja, embalado con esta requisito, o que el producto vaya embalado en un envase, en una bolsa que tenga este requisito de embalaje. Dentro de los requisitos específicos que establece la adenda, se establecen los niveles de muestreo para los envíos, la acción principal que le correspondería al SAC ejecutar. Y se establece que para las plagas externas, el nivel de muestreo tiene una capacidad de detectar un 2%, con un 2% de infestación en base a una...
Perdona, Roberto, te interrumpo un segundo, solo para hablar muy cerca del micrófono, que se escucha un poco... O sea, idealmente si tienes un audífono, pero si no, hablar muy cerca del micrófono, por favor.
¿Me acerco más o que me aleje?
No, si te puedes acercar al micrófono, ideal si es que tienes un audífono, o si no, muy cerca del micrófono.
¿Está mejor ahí, Andrés?
Sí, mejor.
Bueno, voy a repetir entonces. El nivel de muestreo de los envíos está basado en tablas de muestreo que establecen bajo un supuesto de un 2% de infestación, que se puede detectar con un 95% de confianza la presencia de las plagas objetivo establecidas en la ley. Y para plagas internas, el nivel de infestación, manteniendo el 95% de confianza, aumenta a un 5%. El proceso de muestreo...
The sampling process is based on a sample containing a certain number of fruit or berries, in the case of blueberries or grapes. And these will be inspected. What is established is 149 units or fruits, individual fruits, and 90 or fruits in other cases. How do you determine the number of cases out of which you need to draw samples? The interpreter apologizes. The sound quality is quite poor. The interpreter will do her best with a summary. Of course, we are referring to high population. We're talking about individual fruit. So the result of this division is a small number, which means that in our case, the minimum number of cases for inspection will always be 10. Also, the agreement determines how the cases will be selected. The first one is selected randomly. The second one is identified according to an interval, which is determined by dividing the total number of cases in the lot by the total number of sample cases, and this is how we determine that interval. For example, if it's 2,000 cases and we need 10 samples, the interval would be 200 cases. Thus, I would randomly select a first case, and then I have to start counting 200 cases out of a lot until I get to my second sample case, and the third one will come after the next interval of 200. Now, what SAG will do is to conduct the sampling and conduct an inspection of the fruit before shipping. And the objective is to identify any pests, any of the target pests. And we will apply rather the admittance and rejection criteria. Also, the packaging will be inspected, as I mentioned earlier. In terms of the criteria for acceptance or rejection. So in the case of Lobesia botrana, the grapevine moth, one or more would mean the rejection of the shipment. Also, if a single Mediterranean fruit fly, Cerathitis capitata, that would also bring about the rejection of the shipment. If other pests are detected, with two or more, the shipment would be rejected. But if, for example, one type of pest that is not one of the target ones, then some type of lepidopteran, then the shipment can be certified with a prior notification to APHIS. In terms of the number of fruit per case, we see that we will select a number proportional to the case, and it's the fruit that will be the objective. If any individual fruit is suspicious of having any symptoms, it will be selected for inspection, and an internal inspection of each one of the fruit in the case will be conducted. There's the inspection process, of course, but we also need to form a sample pallet that will travel to the US along with the fruit. And based on this, a decision will be made as to whether the entire lot needs to be inspected. The process is very similar to the process by which we take samples for inspection. It will amount to 2% of the shipment. I'm talking about the size of the sample, up to 10 cases. So we're thinking about complete full containers that make up a shipment. Each sample pallet will be made up of 10 cases. The sample pallet must be clearly labeled as a sample pallet so that it is easy to identify at the point of entry. And if CBP or APHIS wish to inspect it, it should be easy for them to identify it and proceed to the inspection of the sample cases. Among the final actions to be taken by SAG, they need to issue a phytosanitary certificate, and these must include traceability codes for any lot within the shipment, or for all of lots within the shipment. And given the traceability system that we have, the same phytosanitary certificate code can be used as a traceability or a tracking code. And the certificate will include a list.
Dentro del certificado de sanitarios, además se deben incluir los códigos SAC de los productores y los códigos SAC de cada uno de los establecimientos en que se evaluó la fruta. Por lo tanto, la acción que queda para el servicio, una vez que se apruebe el sistema, es un proceso relativamente sencillo, ¿no? Solamente falta adaptarnos, digamos, a la implementación de lo que esto significaría. Eso es todo. Muchas gracias.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Roberto. Muy clara la presentación. Lamentamos ahí algunos problemas de audio a los asistentes el día de hoy, pero si es que hubiera algún tema en específico que no hubiera quedado muy claro, les pedimos que lo podamos resolver por medio de la sección de preguntas y respuestas que haremos en este momento. Bueno, ahora les pedimos a los, para dar paso al último bloque de esta jornada, del Q&A, de la ronda de preguntas y respuestas que tendremos de este seminario, les pedimos a los panelistas que puedan estar atentos, prender sus cámaras para poder dar paso a esta etapa. Bueno, hemos recogido varias preguntas durante el seminario. Agradecer realmente una muy activa participación de todos los asistentes el día de hoy. Vemos el entusiasmo y el interés en este tema, así que muchas gracias primero que nada por toda su participación. Quisiera, antes de dar paso a las preguntas, comentar algunas de las preguntas que fueron recibidas y que fueron respondidas en vivo, principalmente por algunos panelistas del equipo de Gateway, pero que como esas respuestas quedan de manera privada cada uno de ellos, me gustaría repetir las cosas de poder transmitir a todo el público presente. Bueno, por ejemplo, Andrés Armstrong preguntó, what would be the dose for blueberries coming from free EGBM zones? Y Frank Benzo respondió 300 GI. Bueno, por otro lado, which are the other 2 irradiation facilities in the US besides Gulfport? Y la respuesta fue Texas A&M, basically a research facility, and CEDEX in Sioux City, Iowa. Gateway America will soon have a facility in Hidalgo, Texas, and looking at East Coast strategic locations as ports of entry, as well as international locations. Bueno, aquí llegó otra pregunta de Carolina Uquillas, que pregunta, what do you consider as an importer, the market company, for example, Dole, or each individual grower? I mean, when you need to apply for the importer compliance agreement. Frank Benzo responded, importer license is typically the person taking title upon entry. The license is good for 3 years, and also Ryan Hollingsworth complements that answer. The farm or the grower is considered the export in this instance. The importer of record would be the consignee. Gateway America works with exporter and importer to ensure all of the regulations and the logistics routing is correct. This allows for the seamless importing environment. Gateway America submits the importer of record information to USDA and help set up their compliance agreement. So importer not familiar with—
If I could hop in there for a second.
Yes, please.
There are some different ways we do that depending on which facility you're working with. With Gateway America, that's how we do that. The importer will work directly with Gateway America, but for our other facilities, they work directly with USDA to collect all information regarding the compliance agreement first.
Perfect, thank you very much. Well, we have another question here from Kim Flores. How does the irradiation process affect the nutritional value of the product treated? Ryan Hollingsworth from Gateway responds, the nutritional values remain unchanged with irradiation when treated within the regulations. Within the US, we must adhere to the CFR or Code of Federal Regulation, specific to the regulations within 21 CFR 179.26. This regulation mandate a do not exceed max dose of 1,000 GY or 1K GY. This is a very low dose to fruits. One of those are the reasons the dose limits exist within the CFR is to ensure there is not a change in nutritional value. I don't know if anybody wants to jump in with anything to add to that answer. No? Okay. Okay, sorry, I will. Bueno, acá hay una pregunta de Alejandra Fischer que dice, buen día, mi consulta es si las cajas de arándanos para exportar a Estados Unidos deben llevar la etiqueta de herradura. No sé quién quisiera responder. Laura, I think that probably the question was not clear enough, or?
So I'm not sure what the question means by ripe. There are no requirements about labeling as ripe. There are requirements about other items.
The Herradura logo.
Yes, there are requirements about using that image on product as well as that information at the point of sale in the United States.
I think Patrick illustrated that in his presentation on the guavas, I believe.
Acá hay otra pregunta desde Viviana Rosas. ¿Cuánto tiempo adicional le añade a la cadena de abastecimiento el tratamiento de irradiación en destino?
I'd like to jump in on that one. This is Ryan with Gateway. When you're looking at fumigations that are already being done, you're looking at usually about a 4-hour timeline to that. With the irradiation being used with the X-ray units, it will be relatively the same speed and time. So the only difference is you won't have that temperature change. So it shouldn't affect any of the logistics steps at all.
Perfect, thank you. Well, we also got some questions from ASOX here. When the final rule will be published in favor for the use of irradiation in grapes and blueberries? I don't know if any, but yeah, Jill, please.
We don't have a specific timeline on that. We've had some challenges as to how APHIS is able to apply their regulations. And so we've run into a slowdown or a pause, I would say, as to how we've been proceeding. And I'm going to give you 3 parts to the answer, going from broad to specific. Anytime we have a presidential election year, things go on pause because we don't know who's coming or going. It doesn't matter if the incumbent stays the same or if it changes. So every 4 years, this fall and winter, many people are hesitant to make any kind of decisions because authority is shifting. That's an overlying complexity. But previous to that, we were looking at we had a group reevaluate when we need to provide information to the public with regard to an administrative act. So there is a group independent of the, well, not quite independent, but it's certainly a part of the regulatory process of taking the final steps on publishing for blueberry and grapes from Chile in favor that they're looking at this in a new light, along with all other irradiation import issues at similar stages. And they're looking at this in a new light relative to one of our administrative requirements for making sure that the public is informed at each step of the way. Our group, PIM, who is the interface with many of you, will receive the next briefing on this subject next week on Wednesday. So we're hoping to have more clarification as to the interpretation and how that's going to impact what steps need to be taken in what order, particularly with regard to informing to public notifications, stakeholder notifications. So we are aware of the importance of this issue and of the need to continue movement on it. And as the interface group, we keep this question on front of us. And so when we receive more information from the regulatory group, we will be able to assess the situation and see how what are the next steps that are going to be required to get it published and when. We'll continue to work with our usual network of international services. We work with APHIS International Services, who also connects with the embassy, as well as the SAG in Chile, and of course with our private sector stakeholders to keep them posted as we're able to get more information on this.
Thank you very much, Jill. Also, well, to the APHIS team, what is the administrative process to incorporate new fruits to the irradiation agreement?
I'm not sure about the reference to administrative process.
Yeah, like what would be like the process to apply new application of new commodities that wanted to be added?
What Maggie discussed. Maggie has this. Is that
No,
what they're asking?
this is Barbara. I think I can answer it. Each commodity, we have blueberries and grapes under consideration to be finalized. So SAG would put a request to APHIS to add apples, pears, blueberry, whatever they wanted. So we create an addendum for each new commodity to be added.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Also, another question from ASOX. Are there facilities in the US for X-ray radiation?
I can grab that one. At this time, we only have 3 facilities that are using or working with our upon arrival irradiation program. 2 are E-beam, 1 is gamma. However, there are plans for other facilities, including an X-ray facility coming soon. I wanted to clarify something for folks. I got a couple of emails. I guess these folks are shy. They had a question about the locations of the facilities specifically. Just because we have facilities in Mississippi, in Texas, and in Iowa does not mean that your commodity can only make entry in those locations. We actually allow ports of entry all over the United States with the exceptions of Florida and California. So we regularly get product coming into places like Houston or Atlanta or Newark or Philly or Charlotte or New Orleans. And then we work very carefully with the importers during that importer compliance agreement process to ensure a safe route from that port of entry to the treatment facility. So just because we have these 3 locations, it does not mean that you cannot bring in your commodity into other locations and get it safely to these treatment facilities. So obviously logistics, some of our facilities aren't maybe in the best spots in the United States, but we can get that commodity to these locations and work with the ports of entry that you're most comfortable working with.
And as a side note to that, Gateway America is looking to make it more convenient for you at strategic ports of entry, so we can make it much more efficient logistically. So stay tuned.
Tenemos otra pregunta aquí que la hace Víctor Moreno. La pregunta es la siguiente: ¿las frutas orgánicas mantienen su condición al ser tratadas con irradiación? Y pregunta, ¿siguen siendo orgánicas una vez ya tratadas?
So I can field that one. Unfortunately, the FDA here in the United States considers irradiation and ionizing energy as a food additive. So therefore, it would invalidate any U.S. Organic status. At this time, there are no plans to change that designation with the FDA, though I think it leaves a lot of us scratching our heads. If photons aren't organic, I'm not sure what are. So we'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question, and we will have to start like closing with the last few questions. What is the cost per pallet to irradiate the fruit? Like maybe a range or something to illustrate a little bit the audience about this.
Sure. Actually, it's based on volume and dose and dwell time. And not to evade the question, but it's very similar in cost per pound as it is to methyl bromide, with the understanding that your yield is going to be more than what you typically get with fumigation. So if you were to factor everything in, it's relatively the same.
Okay, maybe these questions could be for Patrick. If you could elaborate further on the consumer's acceptance of irradiated food.
I would hesitate to speak too broadly because we have a very narrow sample size, with guavas really being the primary factor there. However, we have in our stores, we have zero, to my knowledge, no pushback whatsoever on the part of the customers for the product. I don't think they see the product. My guess is they don't see the product as a risk. They see the wholesome, safe, high quality, attractive product that meets or exceeds their expectations on performance and quality and flavor. And with that, we've not seen any downside whatsoever. Like I said, I'm a little bit hesitant to say, I guarantee that same situation would occur in blueberries, but that's our educated guess. We're supportive with the information we know and with what we have at this time.
And I'd like to add to Patrick's comments as well. I mean, irradiation is the only one that has full disclosure and has to have a label, whereas methyl bromide is a fumigant and typically leaves a carcinogenic residue on the fruit, which is why you should wash your fruit, obviously. So that being the case, I mean, methyl bromide is extremely potentially harmful because of the carcinogenic qualities, whereas irradiation is not.
Thank you, Frank. And thank you, Patrick. Well, our last question, I'm sorry that we don't have more time to answer any others. This is a more general question addressed to Maggie. Where can I find the US import requirements for different fruits?
Oh, you can find the import requirements on the USDA APHIS FABR website, and I'll share that website in the chat box for everybody. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Bueno, agradecemos enormemente a todos quienes nos acompañaron en el día de hoy. Agradecemos a todos nuestros panelistas. La verdad, un lujo tenerlo a todos ustedes el día de hoy con nosotros. Agradecer a APHIS, a SAC por el permanente apoyo en todas las iniciativas y especialmente el día de hoy en este seminario. Agradecer al auspicio y el apoyo, al gran apoyo por parte de Gateway en esta iniciativa también. Resaltar también la presencia de autoridades, muy honrados con haber contado con la presencia del Undersecretary Aiba el día de hoy. Eso representa la relevancia y la potencia de la relación que existe entre Chile y Estados Unidos para trabajar en todas estas distintas iniciativas en beneficio de ambos países. Agradecer también a nuestro embajador Silva por acompañarnos el día de hoy y su gran apoyo en todas las iniciativas que nuestro país está empujando en conjunto con Estados Unidos. Así que muchas gracias a todos nuevamente y los dejamos invitados a poder visitar prontamente chileagrícola.us para poder ver las presentaciones. Vamos a también subir un video con respecto a nuestro webinar y también poder hacernos todas sus consultas que pudieran surgir posteriormente a este seminario. Muchas gracias a todos y esperamos vernos pronto.
Thank you.
Gracias, Andrés. Excelente. Nos vemos.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias a ustedes.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Gio.
everyone.